Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Yeah, I had a subscriber ask me about Sebastian Hoeneß, and I can understand why Bayern fans would be kind of warming to him. He's obviously doing extremely well at Stuttgart. It's as things stand, it's between him and him and Xabi Alonso for Manager of the Year. The only thing I would say is that bear in mind how much legwork Julian Nagelsmann had to do in the Bundesliga before he was considered for the Bayern job. He had to perform miracles at Hoffenheim, and then he had to kind of do a really good job at RB Leipzig for, how long was he there? 4 seasons maybe? I can't remember. Maybe 3 or 4 years. He had to do all of that. And then even then, it was considered not really a shock, but quite surprising that Bayern went out and spent the money that they did to bring him in. And then after 12 months, everyone agreed, you know what, this guy's not really mature enough. He's not got that Bayern aura about him. He's too much of a kind of millennial. Why is he skateboarding through the training ground? All this crap. Things very quickly changed for him. And his age was used against him. Now, I know that Sebastian Hoeneß, I actually think he's actually older than Nagelsmann, if I'm not mistaken. I could quickly tell you he's...
And I also wanted to add that Nagelsmann actually reached the Champions League semi-final with Leipzig.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to add to the experience that you're kind of suggesting here.
Yeah, so Hoeneß is 41, Nagelsmann's 36. So, okay, but I still think they probably would be considered in the same kind of generation of coaches. Only point I'm going to make is I'm not here to suggest that Sebastian Hoeneß would be a bad Bayern Munich head coach. All I'm suggesting is that they went down that route of bringing in the kind of exciting young Bundesliga head coach with Nagelsmann, and he ended up butting heads with the hierarchy at Bayern just as much as Hansi Flick and then Thomas Tuchel after him. And there is a kind of recurring pattern here that suggests that these coaches come in, they expect to be in charge of a club that's challenging for the Champions League, and then they get very frustrated at the lack of maybe proactive work that's been done in the transfer window compared to the other kind of super clubs around Europe. And I don't know. I just kind of think if I was Sebastian Hoeneß, I'd probably be taking a step back from any sort of hope. Any sort of kind of suggestion that he would be going to Bayern, because he's got a very good thing at Stuttgart right now. And why would you want to be the guy that goes in there to put out the flames at Sabina Strasser? You would rather wait until someone else has done that, rebuild the squad, went through all the growing pains with the new players, then you would step in and take on that squad. You don't want to be the guy who's having to basically start from square one.
No, and it'd be a really difficult job at the moment. You could say the same about Xabi Alonso, right? Who I kind of sense might actually stay in Leverkusen, which is obviously a completely different story. But it's a really difficult question that the Bayern bosses have to answer here, because I think it's very much obvious now that the squad might need to be torn down. You could probably look at selling several key pieces here. Gnabry comes to mind. Maybe even Sané, who's every once in a while making noise about leaving, right? Coman, Kimmich and Goretzka, can you really keep them all? You might even want to consider, okay, if Davies isn't renewing his contract, do you sell him as well? It's, what are we going to do with the goalkeeper position? There's so many question marks. And then who do you put in charge of that, right? I think if I was Bayern Munich right now, and I know that Max Eberl is going to come in to be the director of sport, and if you want to know the difference between sporting director and director of sport, I suggest you listen to Matt and my special on Max Eberl coming to Bayern, because we explain the difference there. Is if when Max Eberl comes on, you would expect that he would make a full analysis with Christoph Freund, sit down and look at the squad, look at the coaches, I'm plural here, right? The entire staff, and then decide what to do. And because that's his decision, and I can guarantee you right now, without Max Eber being installed at the Bayern board, there will be no decision made on Thomas Tuchel. Because that is a strategic decision that they have to get absolutely spot on before the summer transfer window. Either you stay with Tuchel or you bring in a new coach, and who is going to be that new coach is such an important decision that you cannot make that without the director of sport already installed, right? Because you have to get that absolutely 100% right. After firing Nagelsmann prematurely, after the situation with Flick leaving, after Tuchel coming in a overnight situation, you have to get this decision right. And you cannot make this decision without decision makers being in place. And I think that is something that they know at the Sebener Straße, right? Do I think that Thomas Tuchel is going to be long-term the right decision at Bayern Munich? I don't actually know if I can answer that question, Stefan, because I don't know what they're going to do with the squad.
Yeah, I think what probably everyone can agree on is that Bayern either have to make some big changes with the head coach, or they have to make some big changes with the squad going forward to get back to a level that they want to be at. History would suggest that clubs tend to sack the coach because it's easier, it's cheaper.
Or sometimes they will just decide to leave, like Jurgen Klopp,
of
right?
course, yeah, of course. And it usually reflects purely on the club as a whole. If the squad has fallen into disarray, that doesn't always work though. And I do think in this instance, we'll have a lot of Bayern fans, I'm sure, in the comments saying, I'm sick of Thomas Tuchel. I hate the way the team play. They're so boring. They're so dull. Yeah, I get it too. But I think if you actually look at the evidence and you come to the conclusion that either Thomas Tuchel isn't a good enough head coach or the squad isn't good enough to do what he, nor Nagelsmann, nor Hansi Flick could get out of it, I would suggest that the problem is the squad, to be perfectly honest with you. And I completely agree with you that it's more likely that Bayern are going to take a hatchet to the squad in the summer and keep Thomas Tuchel and try and build something rather than sack him and bring in someone like Sebastian Hoeneß and hope that he can get another 2 or 3 years out of Thomas Müller. So if the question is who do you bring in to replace Thomas Tuchel, the answer is there's not really anyone that you bring in. The much harder, more difficult question that needs to be answered is how many of these players at Bayern Munich simply aren't good enough.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.
Our house is a mess. Come on in. I'm Amber Wallen, internet comedian, plant queen, and host of your new favorite podcast, Fly on the Wallen.
Okay, that's pretty presumptuous to assume that this is going to be their favorite podcast, by the way. Like, come on, Amber.
Anyway, that wasp that you just heard interrupt me is my husband.
And co-host, Benjamin Wallen, also a comedian, and I host people at our home. I have a great wine collection in my cellar. Well,
you mean the mini fridge?
It's a mini
fridge. It's a mini fridge. New episodes of Fly on the Wallen drop every Wednesday. Listen in as we discuss relationships, books, and keeping our sweet baby kid alive while we make laughs on the internet.
Subscribe to Fly on the Wallen wherever you get your podcasts.